Now this rap flies thing, Tarek, he just chuckled and waved it off, like it was nothing. But Amara? She wasn't buying it for a second. Back when she was a reporter, she dug up some seriously nasty secrets, way worse than anything you'd find in Lagos. And her gut was telling her something was up. This Chinara's eyes, they sparkled way too much, like she was thinking about gold all the time, and her words? Too smooth, too practiced. Now in that part of the world, trusting someone is like rolling dice, but family? That's everything. So Amara decided she was going to test this girl, see what she was really made of. She was going to pull that mask right off her face, even if Tarek didn't like it. One morning, a real scorcher in Lagos. The sun was so hot you could have fried an egg on the sidewalk, Amara bellowed. She just vanished from her fancy house. But she didn't just leave, you know? She shed her skin, like a snake getting ready for a new game. The fancy silk dresses she always wore, the ones that swept the floor, the gold bracelets that jangled like bells at the market, all gone. She traded them in for an old faded wrap, stained with years nobody could count, and some beat-up old slippers that slapped the ground when she walked. She went right into Makoko, that crazy maze of shacks on the water, where the fishermen are always throwing their nets and the kids are paddling canoes everywhere. That's where she turned herself into Mama Ebel, a poor old widow, hunched over with a beat-up cane. Her eyes were all red from crying, and she'd been practicing that in the mirror, you know? I lost my son, she'd wail to anyone who'd listen, taken from me in a fire when he was just a little boy. My heart's been bleeding ever since. It was a real tear-jerker of a story, and Amara played it like she was a big star in one of those Nollywood movies. She tracked Chinara down to some fancy cafe on Victoria Island, where it smelled like coffee and money. Chinara was sitting there, legs crossed, sipping on a cappuccino, wearing a dress so tight it looked painted on. Her phone was glowing with all the likes and comments she was getting. Mama Ebel shuffled in, her wrap dragging on the ground, her voice all shaky and weak. "My daughter, please listen to me," she begged, leaning on her cane. "I'm Tarek's real mother. We were separated by a bad turn of events. A fire took him away from me years ago, but now I found him. You're Tarek. Help me bring him back to me. I'm begging you." Her words were trembling, full of a mother's pain, the kind every Yoruba child knows they gotta respect. Chinara. She didn't even look up at first. Then she finally raised her head, and her red lips curled into a smirk that could cut you deep. "You think I'm your personal ATM or something?" she said. "Old woman, if you want money, go sit on the side of a road with a bowl. Don't waste my time." She just flicked her hand like she was swatting a fly and went back to scrolling on her phone, tapping away. Mama Ebel just stood there, head bowed. But underneath that act, Amara's eyes were burning. She'd slipped a recorder into her wrap, and it caught every single nasty word Chinara said. Later, back in her dark study, all alone, she played it back. "That girl's heart is stone cold," she muttered, pouring herself a shot of that local liquor to calm her nerves. Cold as a river at midnight, no warmth for a mother's cry. She called Tarek home that night, and the air was thick with the sound of generators running outside. He walked in, his tie all loose, his face still looking hopeful. "Mama, what's this about Chinara?" he asked, slumping down into a leather chair. Amara put the recorder on the table, pressed play, and let Chinara's voice fill the room, sharp, cruel, and cutting right through the air. Tarek, he frowned when he heard that, but he shook his head, like he was trying to clear it. "Maybe she's just stressed, Mama," he said. "You know how tough life in Lagos can be. I still see love in her eyes when she looks at me." Those words of his, they were hanging in the air, stubborn as a goat that doesn't want to move. "Amara," she leaned forward, her voice low, like a storm was brewing. "Love doesn't sound like a snake hissing, my son," she said. "You think I put on this whole show for nothing? I've walked these streets, dug up lies when I was a reporter. Just one test isn't going to do it. I'll peel her open until you see the rot." Tarek just sighed, running his hand through his hair, but Amara wasn't going to be swayed. She'd spent years sniffing out the truth in that city, interviewing chiefs, chasing crooks, dodging danger left and right. Chinara was like a puzzle she had to solve, and Mama Ebel was just the beginning. In Lagos, where your family is your anchor and trust is as fragile as a piece of glass, Amara was going to protect her boy, even if he fought her like a kid who doesn't want to take his medicine. Then came the big move, the kind of play that could shake Lagos right down to its foundation. One hot, sweaty morning, when the air was thick with diesel fumes and the hawkers were yelling their heads off, whispers started spreading through the city like termites eating wood. Tariq Bello, the golden boy of the oil empire, had vanished after a business trip to Abuja. The story spread like wildfire. They said his plane never landed. His phone went dead, and the family's oil wells were drying up. Debts piled up, contracts turned into nothing, and the Bello name was teetering on the edge of falling apart. By noon, everyone was talking about it, from Oshodi to Lekki, even in those WhatsApp groups in the barbershops and salons. But here's the real story. It was all a lie, a big show put on by Amara herself. She'd hired some actors to leak the rumors, paid a friend who worked at a radio station to sound the alarm. She even staged a frantic call to Tariq's office. Her son wasn't lost. He was just hiding out in a quiet little guest house in Ikeja, sipping malt and waiting for her next move. Amara didn't stop there. Oh no. She put on her Mama Ebel disguise again, the wrap all soaked from a sudden rain, her cane tapping on the wet ground. She showed up at Chinara's fancy apartment in Lekki, where the gate guard looked at her like she was trash before he finally let her in. "Chinara, my child," she cried, her voice cracking like an old pot. "I've found Tariq. He's hiding, scared for his life, but I need money to bring him home. You're his fiancée. Save him. I'm begging you." That plea was hanging in the air, raw and desperate, the kind of thing that would melt the heart of anyone who cared about family. Chinara. She stood in her doorway, wrapped up in a silk robe, her hair piled up on her head like a crown. She didn't even flinch, her eyes narrowed, her voice cutting through the rain like a knife. "If he's broke, what's he to me?" she said. "You think I'm going to waste my money on a nobody? Get out of here, you old hag. Don't dirty my steps." She slammed the door so hard the frame rattled, then turned back to her mirror, putting on mascara like nothing had happened. That night, Amara heard from a spy she had eyes everywhere, that Chinara strutted into a party at some fancy club in Lekki, laughing real loud, her arm hooked around some new guy, some fat cat. Chinara. She wasn't shedding any tears, wasn't worried at all, just a hunter, sniffing around for some fresh meat. Tariq saw it all, thanks to a tiny camera Amara had hidden in Mama Ebel's shawl. He was sitting in that guest house in Ikeja, the fan going overhead, his fists clenched so tight he could have cracked walnuts with them. The video was playing on a laptop, showing Chinara's cold words, how fast she switched to another guy. "Mama," he said, his voice cracking like a little boy's. "I saw her just walk away like I was some used rag." But he added, "My heart still wants to believe she's got some good in her." His eyes were all wet, his faith hanging by a thread. Amara sat down next to him, her dress rustling, her voice strong as iron. "A woman who takes off when the money's gone. She's not a wife, Tariq," she said. "She's a leech sucking you dry. You gotta see it now." But Amara wasn't finished digging. She called up some old contacts from her days as a reporter, guys on the street, bar owners, even a retired cop down in Port Harcourt. Word started coming back, dark and heavy. Turns out, Chinara had a past. Years ago, she charmed some businessman in Port Harcourt, drained his bank accounts dry, then skipped town when he caught her trying to sell his car. "She's a hunter," Amara whispered to herself, sipping on some tea in her dimly lit study. "And my son is just her latest target." Tariq's hope, though, it was stubborn, clinging on like dew on the grass in the morning. He'd seen the proof, heard the nasty things she said, but his heart was still fighting with the truth. Amara knew just one more test wasn't going to break him free. She needed a hammer to smash that illusion wide open. In that city, where money can disappear like smoke and love can turn to ashes, she was going to fight until her boy could see things clearly. And fate, like it often does in those parts, was waiting in the wings with a little twist of its own. In Makoko, where the houses are all perched on stilts above the murky water, like birds afraid to land, lived a young woman named Layla Keita. She was 25, didn't have any fancy high heels or Instagram fame, just a quiet strength that shone like the moon on a clear night. She spent her days working with a charity, hauling wood and books to build a school for kids who'd never even seen a classroom. She wore simple clothes, her hair tucked under a headscarf, and her hands were rough from work, not fancy nail polish. In a city like Lagos, where all that glitter often hides a lot of dirt, Layla was a rare kind of person, someone who cared more about other people than herself. The folks in Makoko called her Sister Grace, not because she was loud and flashy, but because she lit up the dark in her own quiet way. One afternoon, the sun was beating down, and the air smelled like fish and salt. Mama Ebel came hobbling through the narrow lanes. Her cane sank into the mud, and then she tripped, her dress catching on a splintered piece of wood. Down she went, letting out a little cry. Layla was there in a flash, dropping a pile of notebooks and running over to help. "Auntie, are you okay?" she asked, her voice warm like a mother's hug. She knelt down, brushing the dirt off Mama Ebel's arm. "Come on, let me help you up. Lean on me." She didn't care that the old woman's clothes were ragged or that her hands were shaking. She just wanted to help. Amara, hidden under that Mama Ebel disguise, felt something shift inside her. "This girl's heart is pure gold," she thought, sipping the water to keep up the act. Not like Chinera, all show and no substance. Layla sat beside her, fanning her with a piece of cardboard. "What brings you here, Auntie?" she asked, her eyes curious, but so kind. Amara started spinning her story, half true, half made up. "I'm looking for my son, Tariq. He's lost to me, and I need help to find him." Layla's face softened. "That's heavy, Auntie. I'll pray he comes back to you." But Amara saw more than just kindness there. She saw an opportunity. "Layla," she said, her voice low, "I need you to do something for me. There's a woman, his fiancée, who might know where he is. Pretend you're an old friend of Tariq's and just talk to her. It's for my family." Layla frowned, twisting the edge of her scarf between her fingers. "I don't like lies, Auntie. My father taught me that truth is our strength." But she added, "But if it helps you find your son, I'll try just this once." Amara nodded, trying to hide a smile. She gave her Chinara's phone number, directions to a busy market in Yaba, where they were supposed to meet, and a story to tell. Layla went the next day, her sandals slapping the dusty ground, her heart uneasy but willing. She found Chinera haggling over a piece of lace, her voice loud and sharp. "Excuse me," Layla said, stepping closer. "I'm an old friend of Tariq's. I heard he might still be alive, hiding somewhere." Chinara's eyes shot up, not with love, but with that same look Amara knew so well. Greed. "Where is he? Tell me now," she snapped, all business. Layla hesitated, caught off guard. "I don't know for sure, just rumors." Chinera then faked a tear, her voice suddenly sweet. "My poor Tariq, tell me more later, eh?" But that night, Amara's spies reported back. Chinera had hired some tough-looking guy from the bus station to follow Layla, trying to find Tariq's trail. Amara listened to the recorder, her jaw tight. "That girl's a spider," she hissed, weaving traps for anyone she can catch. Layla didn't realize the danger she was in, but her kindness had already changed everything. In a city where trust was as easy to break as a coin, this girl from Makoko was a light Amara hadn't expected. The final act was coming, and Layla, without even realizing it, had set the stage on fire. The night arrived like a steady drumbeat, heavy and slow. The full moon was hanging over the Bello mansion like a big lantern, lighting up all the secrets. Amara had set the stage, every little detail perfect. She'd called Chinera earlier that day, her voice sounding urgent. "Come to the house tonight," she'd said over the scratchy phone line. "It's about Tariq's fate, family only." Chinera didn't need to be asked twice. She smelled money or drama, and either way she was in. By dusk, the air was buzzing with tension, and the smell of jollof rice and fried plantain was drifting. Chinera swept in right on time, 8 o'clock sharp, her heels clicking loudly on the marble floor. She was wearing this Ankara dress that shimmered gold and green, so tight it was hard to miss. She tossed her hair, and her eyes were darting around like a hawk, sizing up the whole room. Tariq was standing off to the side, looking all tense, his hands shoved deep in his pockets. He'd agreed to go along with the plan, even though it was still hard for him. Amara was watching from the corner, her dress dark as night, her face calm, but you could tell her heart was racing. Then the door creaked open, and Mama Ebel shuffled in, her wrap all torn, her cane tapping slowly on the floor. The whole room went silent, everyone staring at her. "I've got something to say," Mama Ebel croaked out, her voice shaking like leaves in the wind. She raised a trembling hand and pointed right at Tarek. "That boy, he's not Amara Bello's son. He's mine, stolen from me in Makoko years ago, when a fire took my home." She pulled out a crumpled-up photo from under a shawl. Amara had set it up, a blurry picture of a baby that could have been anyone. Gasps went through the crowd. Cousins were whispering to each other, and one uncle was muttering to himself. "What's going on here?" Chinara's face went white, then hard as stone. She turned to Tarek, her voice sharp as a knife. "If you're not the heir, we're done, Tarek. I didn't sign up for some nobody from the slums." She threw her hands up in the air, her gold bracelets clanging together like bells at a market. "You think I'm going to waste my life on a broke man? Bye-bye." Those words hit him hard, raw and loud, echoing off the walls. Tarek stepped forward, his eyes wet, his voice low. "But Chinara," he said, "I heard you loud and clear. You never loved me. Just my name, my money. It's over." The whole room held its breath, the tension thick as Lagos traffic. Then Amara moved, slow and sure, pulling off Mama Ebel's wrap to show her own fancy dress underneath. She stood tall, her voice booming like thunder over the ocean. "I'm Amara Bello, Tarek's real mother. This was a test, Chinara, and you failed it worse than a kid cheating on a test." She tossed the cane aside, her eyes blazing. "You're not a wife, you're a snake, slithering around looking for gold. Get out of my house." Chinara stumbled backwards, her mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. "You tricked me," she stammered, her heels slipping on the floor. Amara just laughed, cold and sharp. "No, girl, you trick yourself. Your greed showed you for who you really are for everyone to see." The guests erupted, cousins jeering, and one aunt shouting, "Shame on you." Chinara's face was burning red, her hands clutching her purse as she ran for the door. Her heels echoed down the hall, fading into the night, leaving nothing but shame behind. The crowd was buzzing, some people were clapping, others shaking their heads. "That's Lagos for you," one uncle chuckled. "Money talks, but the truth speaks louder." Tarek sank down into a chair, his shoulders slumped, his VO. Tarek's voice was barely a whisper. "Mama, I was a fool." He rubbed his face, tears streaking down his cheeks. "I kept hoping she'd prove me wrong, but she proved you right instead." Amara knelt down beside him, putting a firm hand on his shoulder. "No, my son, you weren't a fool. You were just blind. Love can cloud your eyes, but now you see things clear as that moon up there." She nodded towards the window, where the moonlight was flooding in, turning the whole room silver. "We've cleaned out the trash. You're free now." Amara stood up, her heart heavy, but satisfied. She'd won this round, exposed Chinara for the vulture she was. But the victory didn't feel sweet yet. Tarek's pain was still there, a wound she couldn't fix with just words. Still, when she glanced at the moon, a little bit of hope started to bubble up. She thought about Layla, that quiet girl from Makoko, the one who'd unknowingly sparked something in this whole mess. The night wasn't over, not really. In a place where fate loves to play tricks, Amara knew that something good was waiting, just around the corner. Later on, Tarek drove out to Makoko, his tie gone, his sleeves rolled up. He found Layla painting a wall at the school, with kids giggling all around her. "Layla," he said, "you helped my mama save me from making a big mistake. I owe you one." She wiped the paint off her hands and smiled. "You don't owe me anything, Tarek. I just did what was right." He kept coming back, helping carry bricks, cooking jollof rice for the kids, showing everyone that he wasn't just some rich kid. Layla didn't trust him at first. "I don't trust fancy men with sweet words," she told him, her eyes wary. But Tarek stuck around, steady as the tide coming in, until her walls started to crumble. One evening, under that same moon, Layla sat with him by the water. "When I was little," she said, "a boy from the city gave me a pencil. He came with his parents to Makoko. Tarek's jaw dropped. I remember that day. My dad took me to see the real Lagos. Was that you? They both laughed, realizing that the past had been weaving them together all along. Months later, they got married in Makoko. No fancy halls, just drums and dancing under the stars. Amara stood there, her dress shimmering, her voice full of joy. I finally found a jewel for my son. The kids cheered, the moon glowed, and Tarek held Layla's hand, knowing that fate had tied them together a long time ago. And look, in this story, we learn our lessons like we're reading from the Bible. Chinara's greed reminds us that Proverbs 11.6 says, "The righteousness of the upright delivers them, but the unfaithful are trapped by evil desires." Her downfall tells us that chasing money over love will only lead to trouble. It's a warning for all of us, whether we're in Lagos or London, to seek God's truth over worldly glitter. Amara's fierce love for Tarek is like a mother's prayers, showing us that family, guided by faith, can protect us from harm. Just like Psalm 32.7 says, "You are my hiding place." Layla's kindness, pure as a stream in Makoko, proves that God blesses a humble heart. Her light shines bright, like Matthew 5.16 tells us to do. And Tarek's journey, going from blind to seeing clearly, shows us how God's timing reveals our destiny. His reunion with Layla is like Proverbs 16.9, where God's hand is always on our lives to lead us where we're meant to go. Share your thoughts down below. Let's talk about what we've learned together. If this story opened your eyes, give it a like, subscribe to the channel, and hit that bell so you don't miss out on any new Baobab African tales. We've got some amazing stories coming up, full of mystery, justice, and wisdom that are deeply rooted in our culture. Type in the comments, "Lord, save my life." Stay blessed, stay wise, and don't ever let the shadows fool you. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and like.